more scalable. See.
So in terms of unicorns, as I sort of previously mentioned, we had some unicorns come through, most from Nigeria. We had a Flutterwave, had those high valuations that we talked about previously, backed by a lot of US money and so on. What we are noticing, sort of as I do the reporting going along, we are seeing some South African building with a scale. We saw Time Bank recently become a first unicorn actually in South Africa. There's some other payments companies that are doing well, maybe not quite yet at unicorn. As well, might make it this year, next year. So not many unicorns, but companies are definitely building scale. Recently did 25 African startups to watch, so that's smaller scale. But it's very interesting to go through the data, and between some of them, they are planning great, well, smaller raises, but you know, that's where you build your scale. That's where it starts. And then Genevieve comes in and they say,
Thank you so much to Genevieve Sangu, partner and Tara at Capital Partners, and also Bloomberg's Bonnie Prinsloo, who covers deals, tech, and M&A for us here. Now, coming up, we'll take a deep dive into one of Bloomberg's African startups to watch, and how a South African company saw an opportunity to connect livestock farmers with global capital. But first, Woolbox is a solar refrigeration company operating in Nigeria, which also made a list. CEO Ayula Dominic shared more about the inspiration behind this startup.
I did something about the word programs and everything like that's someone so yeah, it's a learning. Solution problem. The process of when they took the sun water and then the guy was a refrigeration because many of the days your energy and on Reddit we managed to bring you online, everything from security for their team to bread decreasing. That's literally a subject. And it's free. That happens. We integrated every refrigerator. I see go that kind of community building. Building to be actually feels much easier by comparison. Already deeply understanding but you think that it's kind of where you are in this sport, eventually, or as the relationship you formed, then I guess it's when I first came through, that's because I think being still at the interesting, and then I know Paris is one of the best weekends, like to this day. Serena and Venus' legacy on tennis in the United States is so remarkable, but to this day, more Americans watch the U.S. Open women's finals than the men. And I don't know if sports tennis and average American has a free Venus, but really seems as great sports in the world back in the but and no one gets and no one bats an eye when they see the gallery and then it falls out, right? So looking at the areas that they really fall out. And so because of her lived experience, she was something out of it because he had to kick down the but today we are try to talk me out of it. Because it told me that sort of sense or not pushback and usually where we just kind of that's an understanding. I'd like to think I would have eventually gotten here, but it certainly helped. And having expectations and proximity to the group, and especially if it's going to be the twin that weakness, viability, remains second. I have really enjoyed actually seeing the just over the last 5 years. in plastic years ago, when Sunday, when we go all sports, people still think it's like every time we get a milestone, the lot of the places now shifting where people are realizing there's real opportunity here, but there's still so much more work to be done. And I really believe this club
Of the industry.
more. We more club. And we split. And it's gonna be work.
Prices. Centuries, farmers have relied on live agriculture auctions like this to buy and sell livestock, but technology is revolutionizing the way that they do it.
They can do auctions online instead of driving to the auction. That will save them the cost, and that's why we look into technology as a way of enhancing the whole value proposition that we offer to farmers.
Russell Luck is the founder and CEO of Swift Fiat. Swift refers to a global payment system, and fiat means livestock in Afrikaans. The app matches buyers and sellers of livestock anywhere in the world. His team travels to remote auctions across Africa, fielding online bids alongside those over the phone or in person, making it a far more competitive scene. At the conclusion of this auction, for example, half of all wildlife went to online bidders. And if you're a winner, another company will help get the animal to you.
It shows that the data solutions which will allow farmers to sell their prices.
And apps such as Wikipedia started. Luck has raised over $2 million in venture capital from other sources, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's also been recognized by the United Nations. Swift Fiat is now eyeing the US market, where Luck hopes growing interest in his auction app will turn into a stampede. And the company says it's able to help more than 249 million women in Africa who keep livestock as a primary form of financial security. Enigma Ventures, another firm focused on female-led startups, believes in Mexico of women-led initiatives in the private sector. I spoke with Sarah Dusick, founder of the VC firm, as part of our Investing Africa series.
Leading the charge in investing in women. Africa has an unusual situation that 50% of entrepreneurs in Africa are female, and more funds are putting more energy into investing. The real shift that has to happen on the African continent is the amount of money being invested. So we're still seeing, sadly, amounts of capital being deployed in continents in comparison to other continents. Africa is ranking last in the venture capital stakes.
Has been silent stories, and that's where we have to mine some stories that we can mine for years to come. And we understand that there's big potential, and as I said earlier, films are making it on that. So you're looking at $5 million movies, or $6 million movies, and the film from the voice setting off is looking at films. We're looking at financing films between budgets of 2 million to 8 million. So we truly believe we will get a return on investment in expectations. But the same investors are going to go out there and start making things that are going to bring you $1 billion return on investment. Just in their family liars. I've seen this happen time and time again.
So the civil rights division program.
The beating heart of global finance, economics, and politics, and where residency leaders are losing markets. Bloomberg brings you conversations that are also deep discussions and important insights. So the future is for inflation. This is now I'm optimistic. I've been worried about the things that are outside of control.
That's too much money. Haley Bradley wants to get low-income families septic systems. When she started this
Legislators have been moving in the aim of forging a new public private deal to speed up the continent's economic transformation. This month's Africa CEO Forum brought together 2,000 business leaders, investors, and policymakers in Abidjan, the Ivory Coast economic hub. Among the attendees was Ghanaian President John Mahama. He told me more about plans to encourage crude extraction and to avoid the assets from getting stranded amid a global decarbonization push. But Mahama says remains key.
Major exports are called food. Significant used to be exports for them. Things it's really hard because of
Leading people battle away from the
loss of production due to climate change.
and leaving hundreds of the voice behind.
So
They operate one if we force the place to
it's
the
really
of
way
getting what
benefits from
is
taking gases and beneficial to it. So we're using gas as well.
because now
And
that
it
it's
allows
shut
us to
down by the
produce
Trump administration, the
Typically,
solution is Alabama trying to help
using unfortunately
everything they did, the grant,
the solution
Sharing
so that's a good thing. And unpredictably too. Volatility increases in prices gold. As gold go anywhere from the south to the north. Because from because of the storming, for the big gold, sticks of gold producing areas of Ghana.
Isabel,
So gold
To go to that.
County, Alabama.
The Trump administration is facing.
Let's bring in Zinka Ibuka, who's in Accra for us, another gold part of the country. Yinka, talk about how this year's forum was different to previous editions. I know you've covered this for quite a few years now.
Yes, this year's forum was really different. First of all, this started really as a small conference in Geneva in 2012 that kind of reaches investment communities in Africa and outside to do business together. It's grown into this huge event that brought together 2,800 plus business leaders and political leaders. As you just said, Mahama on stage, they were actually 7 presidents present for the event, which was really from this francophone event to this Pan-African one meeting actually called the African Davos. Other highlights when Ramaphosa of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and President Paul Kagame shared the stage, and even pleasantries within a very political context, of course.
Yeah, and Yinka, you mentioned the difficult political, geopolitical context. We talked to a lot of people about that throughout the whole gathering. What would you say for investors, some of those key takeaways though, who are, the investors who are interested in the continent, what were the takeaways considering a lot of the uncertainty?
So the ingredients for the room to be gloomy, but actually it was quite optimistic despite all of this. I spoke to a senior bank CEO saying that he was expecting people to be sharing concerns, and they were sharing ways in which they could adapt to the situation. And so in terms of takeaways, one conversation that came up was especially for the that African sorting to finance, which is basically having development funds projects so that more capital interest can come in. That's quite a big necessities that Mother Lily mentioned.
Bloomberg, Yuka, and thanks so much for joining us this month. And that's Next Africa for this month. But don't forget our weekly podcast with more of what's happening across the continent, available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you usually get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to our bi-weekly Next Africa newsletter, available on the terminal and website for even more reporting from the Bloomberg team. But for now, I'm Jennifer Zakasanja in Johannesburg. We'll see you next time. Asia is a continent of contrast. The region is a nexus of rich cultural traditions and a vibrant hub of trailblazing innovation and modernity. We wish to lean into technology even further.
NASA is designing a lab, which is designing a Formula One car. So we take, say, a cheap approach.
So give us a sense of how you translate Korean architecture for the rest of the world.
In general terms, it's where we can be ourselves, where we belong. There is an old saying in Korea that says, "Omburgo, Haibrichi." It means simple but not humble. So it has a tremendous impact on Korean architecture. People typically understand the role of the architectural form. We want to use the role what they do is to make everybody a little afraid that how the role.
From space tech in India to robotics in Japan, Asia is driving the future, reshaping industries, societies, and the way we live. Join me as I take you through the bold innovations. Discover Asia's next-gen technologies on Momentum. Key investors, top executives, join conversations and news makers on the day top students. Insights with
You understand financial and wherever it happens, I'd like to engage the Federal Reserve. This is mean.
Obvious things that Americans have said since the founding, really, which is that the federal government
Right now, obviously, front center for us.
to learn. Just
And
like
in China in
tell
particular,
people
you have the sectors that have sensitivity on both sides of the
and
both the US government and the Chinese.
to push people
So we have not invested in these sectors like semiconductor, we focusing these domestic businesses, domestic consumption and services. So we, portfolio today, we have the largest Chinese pet food company. Again, geopolitically not sensitive. We own one of the largest pharmacy chains in China. We own the largest white mushroom group in China, geared towards the domestic market, but growing middle class, that's higher than and I think that's the sweet spot of where we're focused in the markets.
From the Trump administration.
It's getting them started, but if we restraints across Europe. I'm Creative Group. And I'm Matt Evans. Join us every weekday morning to the opening trade, 9 to 7 a.m. here in London.
But that does not mean that the president gets to have everybody bend the knee to the White House. It doesn't mean that you get to control what he thinks and how he goes through. I think that's like but it's not confined to college campuses.
How other people translate them in decades elsewhere what's your career
and you see this in the funding, they don't. So I think that's a subterfuge to try to get more control.
Before I do all reconstruction, I can do this weekend. About the last couple of months. They have been messing with
The financial things that we've had to discuss.
Teach every year.
There are a few things that I care about. Accounting or dealing
The
with
diversity of music in here, being a good
investors,
listener.
stuff
It
like
depends
that.
on
You want to be
it depends
yielded
on
from it.
family.
You know, the great
There are
job.
things that are under. These
From it,
diversity.
you like
These things are under attack. We need to prescribe things people want to ban.
it's propaganda.
We need to defend our freedoms, because if we don't, they'll be taken away. And that's the essence of it.
Familiar.
Really appreciate it.
CFOs traditionally work. Talking about the people that do a job like this, where the culture is really one that, as is described in the handbook, is unhinged. They try to be like most of my presentations internally starts with a here. But I think for the CFOs of any public company is about clarity. It's not about selling, it's about here's what's actually going on and here's why it makes sense. Set up all. Yeah, he's fun working in a CFO kind of way, which is actually exactly what we want. If we hired somebody that was similar to me, this company would not be performing the way it's performing. This is amazing experience where we envision this limitless future that we want to build. And my job is to where we're standing today. What are our resources and capabilities today? Then strategically, how do we link those together? I think that is really the basis of what a strategic CFO is. That's where the role is. Doctors, language testers, and no cost. That's features. Free is translated into robust user growth. Converting free users to paid subscribers is the ultimate goal. But it's a marathon, not a sprint. Our free product is essentially it's the way we grow is we use it for free. Friends, maybe one of my friends will subscribe, so I don't want to screw up the free product. I don't think it'll ever be the case that the majority of our users are paying. Conversion fees is one part of a relatively complex system. Luis talks about our business as having three almost equal folks who are trying to bring users to the platform and then engage them enough to keep them on the platform. We have a group of people who are trying to make sure that it is teaching really effectively all of the things we're trying to teach. And then it has a group of people who are trying to convert free users to gold. And they're about a third in terms of headcount and really investment. Got way focused on the conversion at the expense of growth or the system not being growth. So far, the company's kept its subscription menu fairly simple, offering 2 tiers as well as a family. With a way and then bring in more subscribers, bring in more. If you offer more, the way we based on lifetime value. Literally a kick shot value. That
You still have no idea this. If you didn't get one, then you will get the 1920-year-old of the country as one. It's even more difficult to have more than the country as well. To the privilege and the right to the university for benefits of and help out the civilians.
Richard Baker from Africa on Friday has that pencil travel ideas in the tournaments. During 10 years, anyone going to take only years to get to a point where you.
At least a dozen people have been injured in this at a major railway station in the German. The attack took place at around 6 p.m. Was carried out by a
Conversations are in commercial AI. So while an increase in rent subscriber drives gross revenue higher, added expenses needed to margins.
But we're not
It's a burden Duolingo is willing to bear for now, and they insist it will soon get lighter.
We are really excited that we're at a moment in time where, as one of our financial analysts pointed out, we would be the best example of a company that's been monetizing AI and consumer internet. Our thesis remains intact that on a per unit basis, the cost of the AI intelligence will network
The last 18 months, we've seen AI prices come down precipitously. Foundation models are becoming the fastest depreciating asset class on the market right now. So look at OpenAI's GPT-4 as one example. Over the last 2 years, we've seen prices come down 9% for that model. That's cost per tokens that cost you money. We've seen the closed source and open source gap close, which make these models a lot more accessible. So we're really seeing a perfect storm for AI models right now.
to make apps and trends get more engagement. And we think if we do that, we're big opportunity to monetize.
Duolingo preserves capital, invest in it. Is true. Not word of mouth and social media instead of paid advertising.
Yeah, well, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
We just did this campaign. That campaign cost us
I wanted to see how many of you would bother to bring me back to life.
We inject ourselves into the social conversation across a variety of platforms across the world. In a way that's authentic and organic. Some of us don't just our social media. See what's up to action. Subscribe now. Because we're very authentic.
Spoken with the first mayor of Hamburg, and that his thoughts are with his victims in the training
techniques, survey techniques.
That's interesting. CNN,
We
but
saw for when things
it's time for our business
you
leaders.
can track it from a number of
Business owners of the impact. But okay,
we are able to
feel overwhelmed. Well,
bites of the apple to subscribe because they stay around for a long period of time. These platforms come back. So we're going to have a long-term relationship with
entrepreneur, her
the
children,
marketing efficacy.
great grandchildren, today. There's the big one is gone. The structure was
Morning lights on, share.
big one was really favorite. That's
And this is projected to
here.
having the government with more territory to penetrate.
Thank you very much.
Just language learning in general. 80% of the spend is it's under 50% of the spend for this. So there's a large, big opportunity. One tool to take advantage of this opportunity is the Duolingo English Text, or DET. It's Duolingo's third largest revenue stream, and it underpins a long-term plan. The DET is a very important part of strategy efficiency standard.
We help certify hundreds of thousands of people every year. English proficiency is good enough to go to college. Somewhere to work. And if we can then integrate that into the app, you started to, and some courses will score. Then you can merge these two ideas and you can help become the proficiency you want to eventually imagine where people are walking around not saying I'm intermediate Spanish or I'm beginning French. They want to walk around saying I'm a Duolingo 14. I'm a Duolingo 26. I'm a Duolingo 77. I'm a Duolingo 115. To achieve that level of being the standard, I think there's tons of business upside to that.
Coming up, Lily may be the flashiest example, but not Sturupa tells me Duolingo's investments in AI are bringing all kinds of returns.
Ways. Simply more content and otherwise community.
And Duolingo's patient approach to growth sometimes makes investors anxious. That's a feature, not a bug.
We have operating principle that's in our handbook. Take them on.
Yes.
Increases, their price.
That's the
Mentioned your mom.
Yeah.
Third business.
Where?
Explain the community. Your mom major.
Chemical engineering, taught me a ton about systems. They're all complex. They full of one thing in a system that's attached to everything else. And then after chemical engineering, debate, consulting firm, where I learned sure strategy, but really about how you communicate strategy, how important that communication is to the actual strategy. Following that, I went to KKR, where I learned from the best capital allocators in the world. What I learned from them was how to identify and then double down on drug businesses. I learned a ton about how to structure deals to maximize options. When you put all of that together, that's a pretty CFO skill set. But it came about because I kept putting myself at the bottom of steep learning. And then I found myself in a company that loves putting people at the bottom.
Scalia also found himself in Pittsburgh, the city historically known more for steel than software. He's come to believe that physical and cultural distance from Silicon Valley has played a role in Duolingo's success.
Luis found the business here. It took a long time before they even thought about it. That only happens in a place where you're from the social pressure, where you're from the way of doing things that everyone else. And I think that in a complex system, which are businesses, where we have a bunch of process ingredients that we make, being separated from the hosts initially really helped us develop that process and compound those things over time. And I think that's a competitive advantage for us.
CEO Luis von Ahn says he considers Netflix and Spotify models for Duolingo. Design, imagination, and style.
One more time.
Engagement is the number one thing we try to solve for. We try to do that by making the app joyful, fun, and we have a huge swath of talented designers that enable us to iterate on that product every day. Creating something like that costs money. How do you do that? How do you make it engaging? How do you continue to iterate without breaking the bank? The reason we have this is so that we have a amount of cash flow that comes off the business to reinvest in design. Because it really is a cycle. We think that the more we can put into making a wow experience, a truly delightful product experience, people will stick around, or chance will have the more subscription dollars. Once we get those dollars, we can invest in doing it. So it truly is a cycle of.
Duolingo has increased headcount every year since its IPO. And design is the company's second largest department, behind engineering. It's determined to preserve a brand and culture based on joy and connection, even with its AI-first approach to content creation.
AI ways to create massively more content than we could otherwise create. We're still we're still making sure that has an excellent quality to it, but about to release about 140 new courses. We're able to even think about creating if we didn't have AI. So it essentially lets us keep costs flat and by orders of magnitude. How are we using AI with customer right now? We do dog food the lessons a ton internally with our employees. Everyone's expected to use the app and find bugs, all of that. There are going to be advances in AI that help us to write code better, test that code, these type of things, and more communities times.
You may be touch with users too, who are outside the company.
Oh, for sure. The biggest way we improve the product over time is through our A/B testing methodology. And it's really the core process mode that we have. What that means is that we are making small changes, testing them on subsets of our users to see who doesn't, and implementing it.
Thanks to driving faster creation of new content, Duolingo now has more courses to attract more users in more countries.
We think that we can grow in almost every country in the world. There are about 2 billion people who are learning language. A lot of them are learning English. And we've gotten better to provide more advanced content over the past couple of years, especially as AI has helped us create that content. What about China? China's been a really rapidly growing market for us. It's been relatively pretty small in terms of total number of users, but it is an enormous language market. Not only are there a lot of English speakers in the market, but we spend a lot of money.
Advanced learners outside the US are more likely to become paid subscribers. But that creates pricing challenges, since AI features like Lily cost more, and users in many countries can't easily afford rates charged to US customers.
Try to adjust the price to be more comparable to like the GDP per capita ratio. And then for Max in particular, you set a floor, we're going to make gross profit dollars per subscription. Over time, as the cost of Max comes down, we expect to have more ability to experiment with the Max price, potentially lower it.
Coming up,
Feliz viernes.
Duolingo has nothing against making money. So why do they refuse to share their users more advertising?
When the public release mentioned that I think dramatically increase the revenue at the drop of that by having words. And he said that he wanted
Jobs overseas. Data and expert analysis at terminal speed. Nobody covers job today like Bloomberg.
What is the issue between the type of information that's being collected by investors and the marking issue that you're describing?
What market says to it is it forces honesty into the situation. We're talking right after the DeepSeek model surprised everybody in its efficiency. It took hundreds of billions off of market caps because it legitimately raised concerns that maybe the future of AI was different. I guarantee you that if you look at other portfolios that aren't marked, they didn't move. If private assets are going to eat the world, as they say, with the equity market halving in the number of names, the crypto world is increasingly an echo chamber. Imagine you have a firm that has some public assets, some private assets. Public assets in AI are down by 20%. You're going to be thinking very, very deeply about what your private assets are worth differently than someone who just has the latter.
Once again on this life.
Cessation of sanctions against
guardrail when they even set up just yet after well covered numbers like substantial up to the minute reporting and the analysis.
No one covers geopolitics like Bloomberg. What's going to be the
That was what it was Asia
Looking at your April 10th.
It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. They'll show you what's happening in ETFs like no one else. ETF IQ only on Bloomberg.
Duolingo has steadily grown with users and revenue since joining public in 2021. It's their profit gained in the last 2 full years. The company's stock has surged in the last 12 months, even as it resists the urge to pull some levers that would drive term.
Yes, long-term investor, we're trying to have an operating principle that's in our hand. Take the long.
Outside lane more than.
That timeline went from 5 years
Historical record trace. It will give them the marker that is appropriate for their case.
Operation Vengeance with the American Battle Monuments Connector. The lone land is exploring.
the
not going to
service
need to pour. We were going to
very funded. It's because everybody
we're like 4 points. For a short period of time. To that, while Duolingo's overall revenues have soared, revenue growth from ads has been relatively modest. Wall Street may just have to learn to live with it.
You must be tempted to just show a few more ads. Bring in some more revenue for here.
Public. At the drop of a hat, by having more ads. And then he said that he didn't want to compete. Do you foresee that shifts at all over the next few years? There was a time when people said Netflix left the rounds. Enough is publicly seen. I've never seen that. However, Luis is the hands-on CEO I've ever seen. While he's around, I think it's.
But there are some changes to keep in mind. Duolingo has offered lessons in music and math since 2023, and it's now rolling out the chess course. Teaches most subjects take a long time. We're not going to be teaching you things are forces, but if it's something that takes a long time to learn, we're starting the math and music.
It makes a ton of sense that math and music are the next adjacencies that we got. They're very much. You learn a language, you have to repeat it fully. You have to structure that. How much capital will they require? It would depend on how much they grow, how successful they are. We'll make those decisions over time.
Margins.
They're part of the main, and that means they're part of the main subscriptions. So their fundamental base is not a different margin profile. Some of them will have different marginal costs, this or that. Over time, we've been consistent, like our high gross margin business, and we're going to try to.
Skarupa follows Duolingo's first principle: take the long view in everything he does as CFO. So he sees when he trains his binoculars in the future. What's the opportunity?
Duolingo. So fundamentally, make our it's more like
it's the challenge for Duolingo. It keeps you up at night.
Probably why it took so
talent
to have this.
Task-oriented,
contract.
motivated, and excited.
But
You see your role as CFO.
it's nice to be able to do
A lot of 10 years. As we automate so much more.
Sheldon Spender's family feels the same way.
And I think that will free us. To do more high-level jobs.
Very little.
Lots of strategic.
Today, I
Maybe our expertise there on one of our moves. Manual.
What's the skill set or an area of
No, the matter of fact, if I were
So I think that Spires is those things that plus humans every day. Humans have a variety of interests, fears, and so I would do anything.
Military.
Better understand.
Became.
Country is very good. Make this sentence. The hardest part about being CFO is the fact that there are so many tasks and context switches that you have to make, and the job is so systematic.
John from the cross that they
Making sure you're on top of
never
all of
leaves
that
the
and thinking
cemetery.
about from this just perspective.
friend called you up and says, I've got great news. Just CFO. What's the first piece?
Make sure you understand the different fears that you're seeing, because that's going to determine your strategy. You need to be aligned with that. The first part of alignment is instant.
Does the geopolitical volatility emanating from the United States undermine the bull case for Mexico? Is that a scenario you've plotted out?
Structurally speaking, we still very positive in Mexico. On the other side, it is a very attractive investment geography for the US, especially in terms of cost. The wages in Mexico are much more competitive than wages in China. These companies have taken advantage of that.
Mexico.
Yeah. No one likes to hear news like that.
Or US as well. The value chains, the supply chains are so integrated that Mexico has to really
This is something known as normal
in
fact.
the hydrogen is growing.
Mexico it's a source of resilience of earnings. It generates complements of diversification. But there's another topic that's very important that sometimes we don't focus a lot about, and why we're so convinced that Mexico is going to continue to do well, just the leverage in the country. Because the leverage in the country is only 33%. And when you see Mexico grow and alleviate growing Mexico, structurally speaking, the leverage is so low that just a little bit of growth in the leverage is going to be able to support that bull case in Mexico. So that's why we're structurally positive in Mexico.
It's the most fascinating time for the global economy in the
ideas. We're exploring them every time, helping to translate the policies from Washington into actionable ideas for Wall Street.
It's the morning call, actually, working product.
Separating the signal from the noise. So fun along the way.
This is because of this.
And all of a sudden they see this normal thing.
The ones that we can see and love these increase that your check
Session in Asia. Europe's trading day. From our European headquarters, we bring you today's top market-moving stories, unmatched expert analysis, and a ground reporting from across the continent. Tune in the Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Television. Context changes everything.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute geopolitical whenever and wherever it happens. I'm David Gura in Ottawa, Canada, and this is Bloomberg.
Improving their growth, improving their walking, improving their cognition. If that happens, if it doesn't happen the same number of times as China, then we can do something that's a bit more common. So if the brain, you basically put a catheter through the brain into one of the fluid filters they mentioned, and then you get those to the brain that create that's called the enough to people may have heard. It is rare, but when it comes to someone with it could potentially be a very suitable stuff. We got to 123 that means
Interviewing key players on issues impacting the region. Join us as we get to the heart of African business, politics, and economics, and ask the question, what's next? I'm Jennifer Zabasaja, and this is Africa. New episodes every month, only on Bloomberg.
I think you've made 50 across 5 teams world, including the one. Silver game, analyze and readings. Throughout the line of appears as Caesar Flickerman.
How many weeks is she?
The latest test tour of infantry yesterday from Hollywood restaurants around the world, including an alien mask and face encounters of the third town, a genuine photograph of memories in the original village, a filming the ocean in space, living Phoenix signature and the Phoenix Redemption. The building runs to June 11th at South Florida in this town. The Empire Wood on the Grand.
Elsie, did you see the knot? Yeah, true knot. It's very unpredictable. Very unpredictable. Tell your doctor.
Here, Deer season. It's that time of year when you can get some.
Is that women that work here also worked as over 1989. I was just hearing stories that I was struggling to believe were still happening, despite all these big hospitals. They can't afford these hospitals. Since they opened the clinic here, we've had over 2,000 births.
If it continues to make.
It has to be all process of pregnancy. We do like the best grades you got as a midwife, cares about the members in this community. The heart that you have for the community is good.
Okay. The fact that free can be down now. There's really.
Hospitals.
Last year, well,
all confirmed miscarriages or they just heavy. The emphasis on the money was quite hard. We need to refer the highest we need to go to one of these facilities.
also is one of America's biggest companies. Here, and I think Apple has in common with Amazon, now, Walmart, they have this link to tariff, right? The president threatening at least a 25% tariff on Apple, unless they move manufacturing back in that state. So the problem is the later they're moving is these players. This is something that not only Apple's going to do overnight, but it takes actually years, but it would make the iPhone more expensive, way more expensive. There's estimates out there, and if the iPhone is enabling you that, and very limited desire to build out.
I'm pretty good though. And I'm Edgar's. Join us every weekday morning. Big trade. Behind the scenes. Kevin Martin.
Of time. Expectations, but it seems to be just as maybe $1 billion return on investment. That's not just the outliers. Have seen this happen time and time
But Anderson said he was never going to live in the peace. He would just thousands of people attend every year. Winners come free of fields of England, Egypt, and the US. American Advance World Champions. He's running exactly for his first class.
Got her into the transport, and within minutes of leaving the clinic, we knew that we're going to lose this baby. And I said, right, let's just take a left here. And we went to the private facility, which is right next door to us.
By the way, I don't know who it is. Nangamba, naibanda fulani basi ujambo wa kupita. Nari natamanyi kakoli manyanga kishingira, nari sinigiranga mwana.
Na moya mas Nibangamba nti bagamba ako kabonero kyamu
The devil was creeping up, creeping.
And when vandals played the ice, not and in 2017,
Dale, ñapo. This one of ours?
We are now recalling them making a stand years ago.
Thank you.
They're bad, not real. Either way.
I want the But she said, how you have kept this baby alive at the beginning is nothing short of a miracle. We thought we'd done something to hurt this baby, and all of a sudden we're now being told this baby was born with an abnormality that wasn't picked up, despite all of those months with pediatricians. She was in a check for surgery in 6 months. If she had surgery then where would she be today? She would have been in a
in South Korea, and the final assembly.
Now weekdays only on Bloomberg.
Here, if you can't do this quickly enough to avoid these 25% tariffs, so what is likely to happen instead is that these companies are going to have to pass on showing the cost of these first to consumers. Apple was already rumored to be thinking about raising prices on its newest flavor. So yesterday I went to this doesn't
She was much.
The president is trying to win the big manufacturing.
The thing was that the mother was working the medicine, so she had stopped giving medicine. Supposed to run out.
But in a large part of Apple's component, semiconductors, so we would like to have Apple.
Nutritions. The Russians still able to get up out of the school. So yes, the police is angry that for so long we paid a lot of money.
Some of you with $500 billion, but now here you're building all over India. I don't know what you're building it in. Experts estimate that US-made iPhone sockets more than 3 times their current prices because it's so costly to replicate Asia's highly complex production features. You build that in the US with a fab in West Virginia, New Jersey, every 30,000 customers. The reality is the fixing.
There's no base. So.
She needs antibiotics. Right? Yes. When you go to these private hospitals, you know, somebody that comes from the slum, they won't even be allowed in the gate. When you go through the doors of those hospitals, before there are people that will leave back again. These people can't afford. They don't have the voice. They don't shrink. Taking wrong here. They are denied rights. Makes us all sad. Once you start focusing on money, you lose sight of what is best for that patient or that mother. That's where things go wrong. Conversation. Here, I think
It's the Fed decision to surveillance. The fastest coverage and service take food press conference. Nobody covers the Fed.
How are you keeping up with increased demand? I have been awarded, to be honest with you, with every single major brand new initiative trade that has been crossing this last week. I'm all on the phone talking about the future. That's what we're gonna do on shore, bring 2.1 billion pairs of shoes that we need. The opportunity in terms of things I believe it's in many people 52,000. Well, I think the challenge for women, coming from the internet, the red, things like lower areas in decent media. You look at this fucking women engagement, 40 million, you can everybody are engaging film has made all of Instagram. And talk to that, and that's not it's going to be a lot. It's going to show what it is. We just and the news and the community because as American audience, we gravitate towards gravitate towards bringing and it's a thing that is being time. And it's easy to the time you can see it. No, that's something that is all and that you know, I didn't know the role of course because at the end of the day, you're building something, and I'm not build community. Bringers and everything from caring for their city. Anyway, or the relationship concerns and the relationship with Serena, is that going to here a different way, or I guess we get to the always shift for the if and the first thing you have in mind in the state, I think I was talking out of it. I think we've been so old and we're panicked along the message. Right. To this day, more Americans are gaming men. And I'd argue that sort of parents for the average American cousin stream of years, they really see and then I think there really
How long did it take for that to be diagnosed and then dealt with?
Then more scarring happens, and then eventually the lungs will just give up.
Actually adds the
Finding and techniques as it happens. Only on Bloomberg.
Innovation product. I'd like to think I would have eventually gotten here, but it's true right now. Obviously, everyone is that are not anything about, especially like I said, 3 years in the
Like those sectors that have sensitivity on both sides of the US government.
I really enjoyed actually seeing this.
So we have not invested in some of the sectors, like
plastic foods are
electric vehicles, we're semiconductors, we're really focusing on is high quality domestic businesses that are around consumption. So we, portfolio today, we have one of the largest, or the largest Chinese beverage
where people
again, geopolitically not we own one of the largest pharmaceuticals in China. We own the largest white mushroom. Higher quality services. And I think that's
doesn't come without consent and coverage. Environment. So there's no like The Rio Day will no longer face environmental justice. Yes. But the DOJ civil rights division immediately following the program, even goes off the time. Lowndes County is a 72% majority black community. The median household income is just above the poverty line of $35,000 a year. A standard septic system will run anywhere from $12,000 to $30,000. That's too much money. Terry Bradley worked to get low-income families septic systems. When she started to puzzle out, she created
But when you know that you're going to make a move, you use your you use that.
And we didn't have this some of the voice for it.
Small fish stars, big one.
Because now the speech of families of the living administration, 300 Alabamians are in Monday. Everything they said the grant was maybe just in those kind of systems. Very good, black dog residents, very good, very fine. The big city, that's why I'm looking through other ones. I have been done with the class of the government. Oh, no. Not just in the very well. Yes.
Like anyone life that ever moves, that excitement of seeing a new life. When that first breath comes, it's just it's awe-inspiring. We never lose. Nobody should ever lose that. There are a lot of scars. But at the end of the day, as a midwife, that's what we choose to do. Read this little bit from the book. Midwives in a way shape society. By babies were welcomed into the world that shapes a generation. You are never forgotten. Long after you are dead, stories of my midwife, my granny's midwife, are told when women reminisce on their labours and births. You have been around for ages. What you do, what you say, how you are, really matters to women, and they never forget. Thank you for being a sensitive midwife.
I think we need to wait and see how exactly particular point and the negotiation and how creative they're going to be in terms of overcoming it. It might be delayed in further, there might be spending of existing period of time. That's what I'm I think it's quite something that these things over the coming days.
This is a very it's important to build negotiators who propose that to the point and what intention in those diagnoses.
So it is an optimistic reading. It's an optimistic reading, rooted, in my opinion, in meetings vis-a-vis of and since they began, and keeping in mind that it fits very well with the first transaction that is running at present. The trust administration that has figures within it, but of course, the active to be very clear that they will deal. Deal.
It's too optimistic.
So,
It's a countdown to the market open as we bring you the trade across Europe. Every weekday morning, opening trade.
I can't speculate because I don't know. I think that when it comes to presenting this forward deal, I think that people.
In 2021, Roman City received a devastating diagnosis. The Roman said it took him to the edge of death.
The next week or so,
Treatment was granted to the time. Found in an unlikely place, the intricate ecosystem of the human gut is part of what's known as the microbiome.
This new organ is going to be the holy grail of what we can do to improve human health.
Around the world, researchers are only just scratching the surface. France, one pioneering lab is seeking to turn fecal waste rich with organisms from the microbiome into medicine, potentially transforming health cancer.
This is the first proof that what is already within us, gut microbes, can help us avoid maybe life-threatening disease.
So, all the universities in the United States and high school could accept students from around the world.
But among them, they have the issue of incidence increasing.
1 in 5 people near develop cancer in their lifetime.
For decades, patients have been treated with chemotherapy, an approach that not only destroys cancer cells, but ravages the immune system too. Research has revealed the microbiome, connection of bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi in the human gut, may hold the key to understanding better ways of treating and even preventing cancer. While only partially understood, it's the largest component of the immune system, containing up to 40% of our immune cells.
It's a very exciting field in cancer treatment because we have discovered that the reason very big link between the position of the microbiome and how the immune system behaves.
Certified gut has a direct impact on our overall health.
Well, I think it was the same thing to American.
I get 6 Amazon forest. It's flourishing, full of life, providing diverse functions to sustain the body. When it gets damaged, including healthy microbes, it can turn into waste or liability. It gets ulcerated and inflamed, and that depletes the body of energy, making it vulnerable to infection.
One of the most promising applications of microbiome science is the fecal microbiome transplant, or FMT, which involves taking waste from donors and transferring it into patients. It's a medical approach that may have saved Albert Sinsky's life.
was a huge shortfall. Many hematological malignancies suffering patients. She was feeling fine until the day she was not.
Few months after her diagnosis, steps to fight her cancer. She suffered from a deadly secondary complication called graft versus host disease, or GVHD.
Graft versus host disease is a hideous complication of marrow transplant. It's when the new cells think that the rest of your body is foreign, start attacking it. And attacking happen in the lungs, in the skin, gastrointestinal tract disease, gonorrhea.
She actually developed many infectious conditions. And at some point, she even had to be transferred to the intensive care unit of our hospital. Had to use a second line of. So, the third line of immunosuppressants and VEGF. That's where you start being very scared about the outcome and the questions that we have.
Specifically designed to treat graft versus host disease.
She was able to be discharged because of that. To translation, there's no sign of she doesn't like she doesn't like complications of her translation.
For patients like Anne, this treatment approach can be life-changing. She was facing certain death with graft versus host disease, and she was cured of that with this treatment.
Alvin Africa is founder of Lymphoma, the microbiome therapeutics company behind drug.
In 2014, when we created the company to take the joint concept of microbiome to improve survival.
Observational data from patients like received access program.
Immediately after the patient has been diagnosed, they receive chemotherapy. As you can see, 20 days after the antibiotic treatment, microbiome has disappeared. After it received drug, we are able to restore the microbiome and reinforcement. We have data showing that for patients that have received microbiome at 1 year, they have a survival of 49%, as compared to historical data, which are showing 50%.
I treated that 1 year survival from graft versus host disease is a major breakthrough.
Results from a late-stage clinical trial led by hematologists and sponsored by the French biotech show that MAT13 can help save lives. Here in a sterile lab, of raw fecal is turned into medicine. The team can produce 4,000 liters of fecal microbes from less than a teaspoon of liquid stool, enough to potentially treat thousands of patients. To manufacture our main asset, MAT 13, we start with fecal matter from healthy donors. It means having no presence of more than 50 different pathogens, but also we monitor their health with physician consults from time to time, just to be sure there is nothing that would affect the quality of the microbiome community.
It's a crucial screening process to eliminate the risk of all infection. Other than noting a few selected strains of bacteria, Pharma combines the bacteria from multiple donors, offering patients a number of samples.
Each patient will pick up, so to speak, the best bacteria for himself. After a period of uptake of the MAT 13, we see that each of them has rebuilt his own microbiota by picking up the bacteria from donor 1, donor 2, donor 3. It is waste, but waste for one person or one process can be the starting of another process.
Isn't the only one in this space. Most of it is innovative approaches and getting around. Some of the world's biggest pharmaceutical giants, including Sanofi, with announced with other companies developing microbiome-based treatments. All these ventures have been successful, underscoring the uncertainty in this emerging field. Thousands of miles away in Hong Kong, Professor Siyu Ong runs a lab working to turn gut bacteria into drugs to treat a variety of illnesses, including COVID, disease,
I think the microbiome probably is the last human organ that is currently under research. It's like so far, I regard it as a second degree.
Despite his
using microbiome to treat tissue diseases was deadly for centuries in China. It's a very famous Chinese physician called Li Shichen who's really documented the use of fecal matter described as golden yellow soup food poisoning. In those days, antibiotics just did not exist.
For applications for fecal microbiota transplants, especially since doctors in the Netherlands showed in 2013 that donor feces can successfully treat a diarrhea-causing condition known as C. diff. But gaining regulatory approval for other treatments has so far been elusive. Only 2 treatments have been approved by the US Food and Drug Administration so far.
The idea is really to translate some of the microbiome knowledge into clinical applications to detect disease earlier when it can be cured, and so that it can improve the health of those with different types of diseases.
My farmers reported success with graft versus host disease breakthrough. It could pave the way for other treatments that Alpha-Gal thinks may transform cancer care.
We've seen the evolution of treatments of cancer that are starting with surgery, then radiotherapy, then chemotherapy, immunotherapy. But here we are adding another pillar, which is the microbiotherapy.
The US does have a lot of
diseases too.
The ruling is inquiry and conduct the House of Science and Law against it says, I'm the clear understanding that he is to give into the administration of the country. Feeling the data are Right now, Trump is attacking all of the values. I mean, and the government is showed its answer and it shows the what line it is willing to go. Trump administration should be right.
Now you got our podcast, the deal. For baseball player turned business executive. And Kelly, we'll hear from all stars like Jay Williams, Billie Jean King, All able, don't get ahead of them, and so many more.
I'm not questioning that.
Data is unique, provided every day on Bloomberg. Context changes everything. Once again,
Cessation of sanctions against Syria.
Maybe set up
Decided how the savings again may already be done.
In 2000 post Napster, generally everybody wrote off the industry in the investment. I didn't mind that chapter because then I got left alone. Actually, I think out of that period, we started to create better art because the pressure wasn't only from the technology to be the most powerful chapter. And then iTunes came in. iTunes took Apple's credit. It had a boutique taste mentality about the store, which meant that I think they understood. I can tell you from that period, the artists that came through were of a very high quality because it was encouraged to be boutique. Now, ironically, this chapter has made us more money times 5. The iTunes chapter and the post-Napster chapter, but an algorithm tells you what you want, not what you might be making. And there's a difference between what you want with streaming. The downside is you have incredible penetration. We have hundreds of millions of people around the world, and so that has been very lucrative as a business.
Technology is driving business across Europe.
Has that resulted in any price increases for your customers?
Not yet. We're trying to be creative and figuring out ways.
Cornerstone.
And so we're doing it like not.
I think this bill is very because, as I said, economic policy really relates to its trade, taxes, and deregulation. So this tax bill, first step, I hear the permanent spending bill from 2017 is going to give everyone's talking about, oh, there's not enough certainty now. Well, what I can tell you is permanent is going to give great certainty. And I think the story, and I've talked about it pretty bit, is Washington style is happening. You know, I am concerned about our controlling expenses. Yes, we got to control the economy, but accelerate the economy and stabilize and bring it down until we get to GDP. And I think this bill is very relevant. And what I'm talking about is something that is in front of by 2028. They get here overnight, not going to get there tomorrow, but what we're going to do is change the trajectory and start moving it down. So if we get down to 6%, something below here with five handle because what scoring doesn't include that we have substantial share of income coming in still. That's not included. We have bills saving. That's not included. And then President Trump has made a very bold proposal on prescription drug pricing. If you're saying HHS, that it's substantial amounts of money, so none of those are good. So I'm very optimistic.
Tariffs, that's an announcement. Not tariffs, 50% and 25% on health products. We should add those tariffs actually.
Has substantial revenue. And is at some point, people, going to allow for terrorists. So, and I think we will reach that rate. The other thing that's happening in a lot of there's the tariff barriers, non-tariff trade barriers, none of these tariff trade barriers are coming down. So first we're increasing there. And again, because we don't know this tariff negotiation is going to end up, they then end up being sold. Several $100 million a year, $1 billion a year from revenue that will be used to generate rebellion. That's $100 million as lots of treasury actions. Well, we've got 90-day calls. As I mentioned several times, I have an trading partners. So whatever it's really focused on, we don't need with the UK, my sense is all the next couple of weeks we're going to have several large deals. Waiting up with games and 90-day calls. With China, I expect we will be negotiating yet the president today, we initiated the pause and at 10% after April 7th to 10% level was contingent on countries or trading blocks coming and negotiating good things. And I think the president is getting frustrated with the EU. There's a problem with the EU. I've said several times very difficult Nigeria. 27 countries. They all have different needs. They have forest, agriculture, so and negotiating. Now, I am very impressed. I met my German counterpart, part of the German finance minister in Banff. Very responsive. Nice Chancellor is an opportunity for a U.S. Germany reset. So I'm very optimistic that perhaps Germany can help push the EU. Japanese channels, UK, and if we go back since the beginning of the year, January 20th, the Trump administration came back. The U.S. tenure is a 3 year so, and yeah, I think that was a once in a example. And matching on race. And I'm not particularly worried about the markets. The other hand, what it also is that this bill is going to create less of a lot of tension.
You're gonna take all that. I don't think
It is a privilege, not a right for universities to live in students and benefit from the achievement to help out their multi-billion environment. Three things are very big.
Whereas the concept is time, which we readily when it comes to entirely because we've seen suggesting individuals when it comes to we know very well that we didn't break their work. I think we need to wait until running
So I'm afraid, not just what but college and university and one of the most not being some of these new and part of the university. Well, I think the same thing that most margins do is that you can pursue your profession if you're working in university, working in the journalist, you want to do the kinds of research you can do. You just don't think about it. You can focus on the obvious things that are marketing today. And I'm, if you have the federal government, the company, what happened and what to work. It's like it's people who are in charge they're already number of names. I think that's to try to look at this it doesn't seem to be you. So you might say, certain
when I take a especially the US, you guys clear fire sell the other company, Virginia. Now we are selling them and that has US. That's how we ended up with all three manufacturing together. So, the main thing is the composition of the float. And then, we can see online US institutions. The other thing I will say, I have access to national entities and some I don't think we have to. There's certainly the US is doing to several more teaching. No idea they're out there doing the sounds of the area that we making the road to it's much different than the defensive job. The man had privilege in training as police and the federal agents for the 5 suspects that are still on run. There were 10 total initiatives, but 5 have been captured in the 14-hour taking the public confusion to the 5 other suspects. There was a video of this sort of they were released. So now